There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that power is not found in how loudly she reacts, but in how deeply she responds. True strength isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about directing it. It's about mastering the storm within so that no storm outside can shake her. Emotional control is not coldness, and it's not indifference. It is awareness. It is the courage to feel everything but choose wisely what to express. When a woman learns this art, she stops being reactive and starts being intentional. She no longer gets tossed around by people's behavior or life's chaos. She becomes steady, grounded, and radiant in her power. She becomes unstoppable, not because life gets easier, but because her inner world becomes stronger. This speech explores 5 essential truths about how women who practice emotional control transform pain into power, chaos into clarity, and emotion into wisdom. Emotional control doesn't start with silence, it starts with awareness. A woman who is emotionally aware knows that control is not about suppression, but understanding. She allows herself to feel anger, disappointment, sadness, and love, but she also pauses long enough to ask why. She observes her triggers instead of being ruled by them. When she feels that sting of jealousy, she asks herself what story she's telling in her mind. When she feels disrespected, she examines whether she's honoring her own boundaries. Emotional awareness becomes her compass. It helps her respond from clarity, not chaos. This awareness allows her to take accountability for her emotions instead of assigning blame. She no longer says, "He made me angry." She says, "I felt anger, and I need to understand why." This shift gives her control, because the moment she owns her emotion, she owns her power. She becomes emotionally literate. She speaks the language of her heart fluently. Awareness doesn't make her perfect, it makes her grounded. It frees her from emotional autopilot. And that's where control begins, not by shutting down emotions, but by understanding them so deeply that they can no longer control her. When a woman practices emotional control, she stops needing to win every argument or prove every point. She understands that sometimes silence speaks louder than defense. Emotional control gives her the ability to choose peace over pride. She no longer reacts to every insult, comment, or manipulation. She realizes that not every energy deserves her response. The moment she stops chasing validation, she starts protecting her peace. Control doesn't make her weak. It makes her wise. It allows her to walk away without resentment, love without losing herself, and forgive without forgetting her worth. She stops confusing control with detachment. Her calmness is not indifference. It's strength under discipline. She doesn't need to outshout the world because she knows who she is. Her energy is sacred, and she guards it fiercely. She's learned that emotional maturity is when you can stay kind under pressure, calm under attack, and graceful under fire. That kind of control cannot be taken. It is cultivated. Every woman who practices emotional control has, at some point, been through pain that could have broken her. But instead of letting it define her, she turned it into her teacher. Pain becomes the forge of emotional mastery. Instead of saying, "Why me?" she begins to ask, "What is this teaching me?" She understands that pain, when processed with control, becomes wisdom. Her heartbreak becomes a lesson in boundaries. Her betrayal becomes a lesson in discernment. Her failures become lessons in resilience. Through emotional control, she no longer lets pain harden her, she lets it awaken her. She learns to transform her emotions instead of transmitting them. When she feels broken, she doesn't search for someone to fix her. She rebuilds herself piece by piece, with patience and purpose. Pain becomes her professor, and every tear becomes a degree in self-understanding. Emotional control gives her the power to alchemize her experiences into insight, compassion, and courage. When a woman gains control over her emotions, she stops confusing attachment with love and chaos with connection. She sees relationships for what they are, not what she wishes they were. Emotional control helps her listen with empathy, but also with boundaries. She no longer explains to be understood or gives to be accepted. She doesn't chase clarity from others. She creates it within herself. In love, this means she no longer reacts from insecurity, but responds from self-respect. When conflict arises, she pauses. She doesn't weaponize her emotions. She uses them to deepen understanding. She can walk away from situations that threaten her peace. Not because she doesn't care, but because she values herself too much to stay in emotional chaos. Her control makes her magnetic. People trust her presence because it's steady, not explosive. She becomes a lighthouse, calm, firm, and guiding. Not chasing ships, but lighting the path for those who can meet her depth. Fear is one of the most powerful emotions a woman can experience. But when she learns control, fear becomes her ally, not her enemy. She doesn't wait for fear to disappear before acting. She acts despite it. Emotional control allows her to regulate her inner world so that fear becomes fuel instead of paralysis. When she faces uncertainty, she reminds herself that courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward anyway. Her calmness under pressure gives her an edge in every area of life, from leadership to love. She trusts her intuition because her emotions no longer cloud it. She can feel deeply yet think clearly. And this balance, this union of heart and mind, is what makes her unstoppable. She moves with quiet confidence, guided by emotional clarity and grounded purpose. Through this control, she learns that power doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from mastering herself. Every challenge becomes a mirror, every emotion a message, and every fear a doorway to deeper strength. A woman who practices emotional control is not detached from life. She is deeply connected to it. But she is not at its mercy. She feels everything, but she chooses her response with intention. She knows that her peace is her power and her calm is her crown. She doesn't seek to dominate the world. She seeks to master her inner one. When she cries, it's with purpose. When she speaks, it's with wisdom. When she loves, it's with boundaries. And when she walks away, it's with peace. That's the mark of a woman who cannot be broken by external storms, because she's already mastered the one within. Yes, women who practice emotional control become unstoppable. Not because they never fall, but because they know exactly how to rise. There is a kind of power that cannot be taken, borrowed, or faked. It's not loud. It's not decorated with titles or status, and it doesn't need applause to exist. It's the quiet, unshakable strength that comes from emotional control. When a woman learns to sit with her feelings, understand them, and not let them dictate her reactions, she becomes a force that the world cannot manipulate. Emotional control doesn't mean suppression. It means mastery. It means you have learned to navigate the storms within you, so that nothing outside you can sink your ship. The woman who practices emotional control is not cold, she's composed. She's not detached, she's disciplined. She feels everything deeply, but refuses to be enslaved by those feelings. To master emotional control is to learn the art of pause, that sacred moment between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. Most people react instantly because they have not yet learned that their emotions are messengers, not masters. A woman who has developed emotional control pauses, listens to that messenger, and then responds from a place of clarity rather than chaos. She doesn't lash out when provoked, because she knows anger that is unleashed without awareness destroys her own peace more than it harms others. She doesn't crumble under judgment, because she no longer builds her worth on the shaky foundation of other people's opinions. Emotional control gives her the power to walk through a world full of noise and still hear her own voice clearly. Think about how much energy is wasted in emotional reactivity. Every argument, every defensive response, every attempt to prove your worth is a leak in your power. Emotional control is how a woman seals those leaks. It's how she protects her energy so it can be used for creation, not reaction. The woman who practices this is not emotionally unavailable. She's emotionally intelligent. She has learned that her emotions are signals that guide her toward truth, but they are not always truth themselves. Anger can reveal where boundaries are needed, but it doesn't have to be destructive. Sadness can uncover what matters most, but it doesn't have to define her. Fear can warn her of danger, but it doesn't have to paralyze her. She meets every emotion with curiosity instead of judgment, compassion instead of shame. Emotional control transforms pain into wisdom. It's the process of learning to hold discomfort without losing yourself in it. Most people run from pain because they think it's a sign of weakness. But the woman who becomes unstoppable is the one who walks straight into it and asks, "What are you here to teach me?" Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every betrayal becomes material for growth. She doesn't pretend she's unhurt. She just refuses to stay broken. She learns that feelings are not final destinations. They are signals pointing her toward healing, boundaries, or self-understanding. When she learns to sit with her sadness, she finds her depth. When she learns to sit with her anger, she finds her power. When she learns to sit with her fear, she finds her courage. Emotional control is not a denial of emotion. It's an evolution through it. There is nothing more intimidating to those who thrive on chaos than a woman who remains calm. Calm is not passive, it's powerful. It means she has chosen not to be controlled by the energy of others. When she is insulted, she doesn't rush to defend herself. She lets silence expose the insecurity behind those words. When she is doubted, she doesn't over-explain. She lets her results speak. When she is provoked, she doesn't descend into the same energy. She remains grounded, knowing that peace is her greatest form of resistance. This level of control doesn't appear overnight. It is built through small, but daily moments of awareness, taking a breath before responding, walking away instead of arguing, journaling instead of projecting, forgiving instead of festering. The woman who practices emotional control understands that emotions are like waves. They rise, peak, and fall. The key is not to fight them, but to surf them. She doesn't drown in temporary feelings. She rides them until they pass. That's how she stays free. Emotional control allows her to lead her life rather than being dragged by it. She becomes unbothered by the things that used to consume her because she's learned that her inner peace is more valuable than being right, being liked, or being in control of others. Her energy is sacred and she guards it fiercely. When a woman gains this mastery, her relationships change. She stops engaging in drama because she no longer feeds on emotional chaos. She communicates with clarity, not defensiveness. She can express her needs without fear, listen without taking things personally, and walk away without bitterness. People sense the difference in her presence. It's calm, grounded, and unshakable. She becomes the anchor in turbulent waters, the one others look to for stability, not because she never feels turbulence, but because she's learned how to steady herself in it. Emotional control also transforms how she sees herself. Instead of being a prisoner to her emotions, she becomes their observer. She can witness her anxiety rise and say, "I see you, but you don't define me." She can feel her anger ignite and say, "I hear you, but I will choose my words with wisdom." This self-awareness becomes her superpower. She no longer fears her emotions. She befriends them. And in doing so, she becomes whole. There's no part of her she runs from anymore. She becomes the embodiment of resilience, grace, and power, not because life became easier, but because she became wiser. Emotional control is the foundation of true freedom. It's what allows a woman to move through the world with quiet confidence. She doesn't need to prove, chase, or control others because she has learned to control herself. She has learned that peace is not something you find. It's something you create from within. Every challenge, every insult, every obstacle becomes an opportunity to practice this mastery. And the more she practices, the more unshakable she becomes. In the end, emotional control is not about perfection. It's about awareness. It's about being honest enough to say, I feel this, and wise enough to choose how to respond. It's about taking radical responsibility for your inner state, no matter what chaos surrounds you. When a woman reaches this level of self-mastery, she becomes unstoppable, not because she never falls, but because nothing outside her has the power to keep her down. She becomes the calm in every storm, the strength behind every silence, and the light that cannot be dimmed by the darkness around her. Emotional control begins within, but its true strength is revealed in how a woman chooses to show up in a world that constantly tests her peace. The second key to becoming unstoppable lies in understanding that emotional control is not about what happens to you. It's about what happens inside you. It is the art of staying rooted when life tries to uproot you. A woman who has cultivated this power understands that she cannot always control her circumstances, but she can always control her response. And that single choice, how she responds, defines the quality of her life. Every moment of restraint, every decision to pause, every refusal to be dragged into negativity is a declaration of strength. In a world that often confuses loudness with power, emotional control becomes a quiet revolution. It teaches a woman that her power does not need to be proven through argument or aggression. It exists in her stillness, in her poise, in her ability to respond with wisdom when others expect reaction. She understands that true confidence is not needing to prove anything. When people misunderstand her, she lets them. When others gossip, she doesn't chase to defend herself. When life disappoints her, she doesn't curse the universe. She observes, learns, and adapts. That's how she wins. Not by controlling others, but by mastering herself. A woman who practices emotional control doesn't avoid emotions. She refines them. She learns to channel frustration into focus, disappointment into direction, and pain into power. When something hurts, she doesn't ask, why me? She asks, what is this trying to teach me? She stops viewing her emotions as enemies and starts seeing them as instructors. Every emotional wave becomes a lesson in resilience. She learns that vulnerability is not weakness, it's awareness. When she feels anger, she knows it's pointing her toward a boundary that needs to be reinforced. When she feels fear, she recognizes it's showing her where courage needs to be exercised. When she feels sadness, she understands it's reminding her of what matters most. This kind of awareness transforms emotions from something to be controlled into something to be understood and directed. Through this mastery, she develops emotional independence. She no longer depends on others to regulate how she feels. Compliments may warm her heart, but they don't define her worth. Criticism may sting, but it doesn't destroy her peace. She has built an internal compass that no one else can alter. Emotional independence means that her joy, her calm, and her confidence are self-sourced. They are not borrowed from someone's approval or taken away by someone's rejection. She becomes emotionally self-sufficient, which makes her unshakable in a world that constantly demands reaction. This doesn't mean she never feels hurt or disappointment. She does, deeply, but she has learned that emotions are visitors, not permanent residents. When pain arrives, she lets it sit, listens to what it has to say, and then lets it leave. She doesn't build a home in her suffering. She understands that clinging to emotions gives them power. Letting them move through her gives her freedom. Emotional control is the practice of flow, letting feelings come, teaching her something, and then allowing them to go without resistance or attachment. This is how she maintains her inner equilibrium, no matter what storms rage around her. There's also a sacred dignity in emotional control. It's the quiet decision to not allow temporary emotions to destroy permanent peace. It's knowing that you can have the last word and choosing silence instead. It's realizing that your response can either escalate or dissolve tension and choosing peace over ego. A woman who embodies this knows that her calm is not weakness, it's her strength disguised in grace. The world may misinterpret her calm for indifference, but she knows it's wisdom. The wisdom of choosing not to let chaos control her. She learns that every emotional reaction has a cost, and she spends her energy wisely. She no longer throws it away on arguments that lead nowhere, people who don't listen, or circumstances beyond her control. The beauty of emotional control is that it also unlocks compassion. When a woman no longer reacts from pain, she can see the pain in others. She understands that most people act from their own wounds. Their anger is often a cry for help. Their cruelty is often fear in disguise. Emotional control gives her the ability to respond with understanding rather than retaliation. This doesn't mean she tolerates disrespect. She simply doesn't mirror it. She stands firm in her boundaries, but she does so with grace. That's what makes her different. She has learned that revenge is easy, restraint is divine. She doesn't need to win every battle, because she's already won the war within herself. Over time, this level of control begins to shape her reality. Because she no longer wastes energy on emotional chaos, she becomes more focused, more creative, more grounded. Her mind becomes clear, her heart more stable. She begins to make decisions not from fear or pressure, but from purpose. Her intuition strengthens because it's no longer clouded by reactivity. She starts to trust herself deeply. And when a woman trusts herself, she becomes unstoppable. She knows she can handle whatever comes, because she has proven to herself that she can remain calm even in chaos. Emotional control builds unshakable self-trust, the foundation of every great leader, artist, and visionary. It's easy to control yourself when life is peaceful. The true test of emotional control is when everything falls apart. When betrayal cuts deep. When plans collapse, when words wound. In those moments, a woman's power is revealed not by how loudly she reacts, but by how gracefully she chooses to rise. She knows she doesn't have to match the chaos around her. She can hold her ground, breathe through the storm, and trust that calm minds always see clearly. In this stillness, she doesn't suppress her emotions. She transforms them. She lets pain become purpose, and confusion become clarity. She rises not in spite of her emotions, but because she has learned to master them. Emotional control turns suffering into alchemy. Every setback becomes a chance to practice grace. Every hurt becomes a lesson in strength. Every emotional storm becomes another opportunity to stand taller. It's in this practice that she becomes unstoppable. Not because she avoids pain, but because she learns to flow through it with poise and purpose. She no longer fears losing control because she has already found it within herself. Ultimately, emotional control is not about being unfeeling. It's about being unbreakable. It's the highest form of maturity, the point where you no longer allow emotions to dictate your worth, your words, or your wisdom. It's where you stop reacting to the world and start responding from your truth. The woman who embodies this lives from a place of centered power. She can face rejection and remain confident, face conflict and remain kind, face uncertainty and remain calm. That is what makes her unstoppable. She has learned that while emotions are temporary, her peace is permanent, and she alone is the guardian of it. The third key point in understanding why women who practice emotional control become unstoppable lies in recognizing the connection between emotional mastery and self-respect. A woman who learns to regulate her emotions is a woman who has learned to honor herself. Emotional control is not simply about being calm. It is about choosing to protect your peace above all else. It's the decision to not let anyone or anything disturb the harmony you've worked hard to build within yourself. It's the realization that emotional chaos, whether created by others or by your own reactions, costs too much. When a woman truly grasps this, she begins to live differently. She speaks less, listens more, and guards her responses as if they are sacred, because they are. Every woman who reaches a place of emotional control has walked through fire. She has been tested by betrayal, disappointment, and loss. But instead of letting these experiences harden her, she has used them to shape her boundaries. She has learned that not everyone deserves access to her emotions. Her reactions are no longer public property, they are private treasures. Emotional control becomes her way of saying, I respect myself too much to be pulled into chaos that doesn't serve me. When she chooses silence over shouting, distance over drama, and self-reflection over impulsive reaction, she is practicing the highest form of self-respect. This self-respect transforms how she engages with the world. She stops chasing validation because she realizes her emotions are not meant to be managed by others. She no longer relies on people to make her feel seen, appreciated, or understood. That power now belongs solely to her. Emotional control allows her to meet the world with balance, not dependency. She doesn't need anyone to fix her mood or calm her storms. She has learned to do that herself. This level of emotional maturity makes her magnetic. People are drawn to her not because she demands attention, but because she exudes serenity. She doesn't project need, she radiates self-assurance. Her peace becomes her presence. Emotional control also teaches discernment, the ability to choose what deserves her energy. Not every situation needs a reaction, and not every comment deserves an answer. The woman who has mastered her emotions learns that silence can be the most powerful response of all. She doesn't waste her breath defending herself to those committed to misunderstanding her. She doesn't chase closure from those who never gave her respect. She knows her worth, and that knowledge anchors her. When she walks away, she doesn't do it out of anger but out of clarity. She understands that protecting her peace is not selfish, it's sacred. There is something profoundly dignified about a woman who refuses to let the world dictate her emotional state. When people try to provoke her, she doesn't rise to their bait. When they try to diminish her, she remains composed. She no longer measures her worth through reaction. Instead, she lets her peace become the evidence of her strength. Emotional control gives her power over what once controlled her. It gives her the freedom to choose peace over chaos, grace over impulse, and growth over drama. She begins to understand that emotional control is not about winning arguments. It's about winning back her energy, her time, and her sanity. But emotional control is not born out of perfection. It's born out of deep self-awareness. The woman who practices it has spent time understanding her triggers, her fears, and her patterns. She knows what wounds still ache and what words cut deepest. She doesn't deny them, she studies them. Emotional control requires introspection, honesty, and humility. It's the courage to look at yourself and admit, I have reacted from pain before. I have let my emotions rule me. But I am learning to do better. This self-reflection transforms pain into wisdom. And wisdom gives her the clarity to act, not from impulse, but from intention. In this clarity, she learns a vital truth: reacting gives others control, responding gives her power. When she reacts, she allows someone else's behavior to dictate her emotions. But when she responds with awareness, she takes her power back. She doesn't suppress her feelings. She processes them privately, understands them, and then chooses a response aligned with her peace. This ability to choose, even in the heat of emotion, separates the unstoppable woman from the easily shaken. It is emotional sovereignty, the ultimate form of strength. Her emotional control also influences how she handles conflict. She no longer fights to be understood. She chooses to understand herself first. She doesn't waste time proving her side to those who listen only to argue. She speaks when it matters, walks away when it doesn't, and trusts that truth will always reveal itself in time. Emotional control allows her to let go of the need to control outcomes. She learns that peace is not found in fixing everything, but in knowing when to release what she cannot change. This acceptance brings freedom. She stops resisting life and starts flowing with it. In relationships, emotional control gives her the wisdom to respond with empathy rather than ego. She doesn't shut down or lash out when hurt. Instead, she communicates with intention, knowing that emotional outbursts often create walls where understanding could have grown. She can say, "This hurt me," without rage. She can set boundaries without cruelty. Her emotional maturity makes her capable of love that is both soft and strong. Love that doesn't lose itself to please others. Emotional control gives her the courage to love without attachment and to let go without resentment. One of the most powerful effects of emotional control is how it changes her relationship with herself. She stops judging her emotions and starts honoring them. She realizes that every feeling, anger, sadness, joy, or fear, is part of her humanity. Emotional control doesn't mean she becomes emotionless. It means she becomes emotionally fluent. She knows how to read her feelings, what they signal, and how to release them in healthy ways. She becomes her own safe space. No longer afraid of her emotions, she learns to coexist with them peacefully. This internal harmony becomes the foundation for her external strength. And when the world tries to test her, when she's faced with criticism, loss, or injustice, she doesn't lose her grounding. She knows that reacting emotionally gives power to the chaos. So she chooses her calm. She knows that calm is not weakness, it's strategy. Her ability to stay steady in storms allows her to see solutions others miss. Emotional control becomes her compass, guiding her through confusion, disappointment, and even success without losing balance. She learns that just because she feels deeply doesn't mean she must act impulsively. She can be passionate and peaceful at the same time. Ultimately, emotional control allows her to lead her life with grace. It gives her authority over herself, a kind of quiet leadership that inspires others. She becomes the example of strength without hardness, confidence without arrogance, and love without attachment. Her emotions no longer overpower her purpose, they align with it. She walks through life knowing that storms will come, but she no longer fears them. She has become her own calm, her own anchor, her own safe place. And that is why she is unstoppable, because nothing outside of her can shake the foundation she has built within herself. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that not every battle deserves her energy. That moment is the birth of true emotional control. The fourth key to becoming unstoppable is understanding that mastery over emotion also means mastery over focus. A woman who has learned emotional control no longer allows herself to be consumed by distractions, petty conflicts, or temporary emotions. She has learned the art of selective energy, giving attention only to what feeds her growth and withdrawing it from anything that drains her peace. This kind of self-discipline is not built overnight. It's cultivated through countless moments of awareness where she chooses growth over reaction, patience over impulse, and understanding over outrage. When a woman begins to truly control her emotions, she stops chasing validation. She realizes that peace is more valuable than being right, and dignity is more important than domination. She no longer engages in emotional tug of war with people who thrive on conflict. She recognizes that her energy is a currency, and she spends it wisely. Emotional control teaches her that every reaction has a cost, and she refuses to pay with her peace for something that offers no growth in return. She understands that not every insult requires defense. Not every argument needs her participation, and not every misunderstanding demands correction. She knows who she is, and that knowledge silences the need for approval. Through emotional control, she discovers that calmness is her weapon. The calm woman cannot be manipulated. She is steady, observant, and aware. When provoked, she doesn't fight fire with fire. She lets the flame burn out by denying it air. Her calm unsettles those who seek chaos, because she refuses to dance to their rhythm. She doesn't get pulled into emotional traps. Instead, she holds her center and allows others to reveal themselves through their actions. Her silence speaks louder than anger ever could. Emotional control gives her the wisdom to understand that reacting emotionally to everything means giving away her power to everyone. And she refuses to do that anymore. A woman who has mastered her emotions is not numb, she is discerning. She has learned that not every emotion deserves expression, and not every situation deserves a reaction. She listens to her emotions, but does not let them speak for her. She uses her mind as the filter through which her feelings pass. This balance between thought and emotion gives her clarity, and clarity gives her power. She no longer allows herself to be swayed by temporary feelings. She understands that emotions, like waves, rise and fall. But if she remains anchored, she cannot be carried away. Emotional control allows her to feel deeply without losing herself in the feeling. With this balance comes a profound sense of inner freedom. Emotional control liberates her from the need to please others, to prove herself, or to seek closure from those who never valued her. She begins to see that peace is not something the world can give her. It is something she creates within. She stops waiting for people to change or circumstances to align in her favor. Instead, she adjusts her mindset, takes responsibility for her reactions, and focuses on what she can control, herself. This self-awareness becomes the foundation of her strength. The woman who has emotional control doesn't need the world to calm down before she finds calm. She becomes her own steady ground. Her power radiates quietly but unmistakably. When life throws challenges her way, she doesn't fall apart. She takes a breath, observes, and chooses her next step with intention. She doesn't panic when plans fail, she adapts. She doesn't crumble when people disappoint her, she learns. Every setback becomes an opportunity to practice control, to refine her emotional discipline, and to reinforce her inner strength. Through this practice, she becomes untouchable. Not because she's immune to pain, but because she knows how to process it without letting it poison her spirit. She understands that emotions are meant to pass through her, not live inside her. There's something magnetic about a woman who refuses to be emotionally shaken by her circumstances. People notice it. The way she carries herself, the way she speaks with calm certainty, the way she holds her composure, even when others lose theirs. Her calm doesn't come from inexperience, it comes from survival. She has seen storms and chosen not to become one. She has felt chaos and chosen not to embody it. Her emotional control becomes her identity, not as a defense mechanism, but as a declaration of maturity. She has nothing to prove, nothing to chase, nothing to fear. She has become her own peacekeeper. Emotional control also gives her the wisdom to walk away gracefully. She doesn't hold grudges, she releases them. She doesn't waste time trying to change people. She accepts them for who they are and decides how to move accordingly. Walking away is not weakness for her, it's wisdom. She knows that some people feed on reaction, and the most powerful thing she can do is not give it. When she detaches emotionally from toxicity, she reclaims her power. She no longer needs revenge, her peace is revenge enough. She understands that closure doesn't always come in the form of explanation. Sometimes it comes from finally realizing you deserve to feel safe in your own emotions. And that means not letting others dictate them. This kind of emotional control transforms not just her interactions, but her entire energy. She stops attracting drama because she no longer vibrates at the frequency of chaos. People who once thrived on her emotional responses lose their grip on her. She becomes mysterious to those who cannot understand calmness. They can no longer predict her, because she's no longer reacting from old wounds or insecurities. Her emotional balance confuses those who depended on her instability to feel powerful. And that's how she wins. Quietly, gracefully, without fanfare. Emotional control doesn't mean she hides her truth. She still feels, still loves, still dreams. But she does all of it consciously. She knows when to speak and when to stay silent, when to fight and when to let go, when to stand her ground and when to walk away. Every decision comes from awareness, not impulse. She has learned that control is not about suppression, it's about direction. She directs her emotions like a master artist directing color on a canvas, each stroke deliberate, each shade meaningful. Her life becomes a reflection of her emotional intelligence, filled with peace, clarity, and depth. When a woman reaches this point, she becomes a symbol of grace under pressure. The storms still come, but she no longer fears them. She has built herself into a fortress of calm. Her emotional control is not a wall to keep people out. It's a foundation that keeps her grounded no matter who comes or goes. The world cannot shake her because she has already made peace with herself. She no longer looks for balance outside. She is the balance. That is why she becomes unstoppable, because emotional control gives her authority over her life. No mood can dictate her decisions. No insult can lower her self-worth. No chaos can steal her focus. She moves through the world with quiet power, knowing that strength is not in how loudly she reacts, but in how deeply she remains unbothered. She has learned that her greatest victory is not in conquering others, but in conquering herself. Emotional control is not just her armor. It's her liberation. It is the reason she can walk through fire and still move with grace. It is the reason she can face storms and still choose peace. And that peace, once found, becomes her greatest form of power. The fifth key to understanding why women who practice emotional control become unstoppable lies in how this mastery transforms pain into purpose. Emotional control is not the absence of pain. It is the decision to rise above it. Every woman who has learned to control her emotions has, at some point, faced experiences that could have broken her. She has felt betrayal, loss, disappointment, and rejection so deep that it left her questioning her worth. But instead of allowing those emotions to define her, she chose to face them and understand them and use them as fuel for growth. Emotional control becomes the bridge between pain and power. It's what allows her to turn what once hurt her into what now strengthens her. A woman who has cultivated this level of control understands that emotions are energy, and energy can be transformed. Anger can become motivation. Heartbreak can become wisdom. Fear can become focus. She no longer sees her emotions as something to fear or suppress. She sees them as raw material for transformation. When she feels broken, she doesn't look for someone else to fix her. She sits in her pain, studies it, learns from it, and rebuilds herself stronger. Emotional control gives her the ability to turn inward and process what others run from. It allows her to heal without hardening, to reflect without retreating, and to rise without resentment. Pain, when met with control, becomes a teacher rather than a tormentor. The woman who practices emotional control has learned that suffering is part of life. But staying in suffering is a choice. She doesn't deny her emotions, she faces them head on. She allows herself to cry when she must, to grieve when she needs to, and then she wipes her tears and begins again. Emotional control doesn't make her heartless. It gives her heart direction. It teaches her that strength doesn't mean not feeling. It means not letting feelings decide her future. She allows her emotions to visit, but never lets them take residence. Through this balance, she becomes both soft and strong, gentle yet grounded. This inner mastery transforms how she moves through the world. When people hurt her, she doesn't seek revenge. She seeks understanding. She asks herself what the experience was meant to show her. Maybe it taught her what loyalty truly means. Maybe it revealed where she gave too much. Maybe it showed her that peace is too valuable to give away freely. Whatever the lesson, she finds it, honors it, and grows from it. Her emotional control becomes the lens through which she views pain not as punishment, but as purification. Every heartbreak becomes a cleansing, every loss a lesson, every failure a redirection. Through this perspective, she begins to see that nothing is wasted, not even the pain. Emotional control also allows her to step into purpose with clarity. She no longer allows emotions like fear, doubt, or guilt to hold her hostage. She acts even when afraid. She speaks even when her voice trembles. She pursues her dreams even when uncertainty whispers that she's not ready. Emotional control teaches her that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward despite it. When her emotions try to convince her to quit, she reminds herself that feelings are temporary, but purpose is permanent. She doesn't wait to feel ready, she acts from intention. Her control over her emotions gives her control over her direction. This mastery also changes her relationship with the past. She no longer lives in resentment or regret. Emotional control teaches her to release what she cannot rewrite. She understands that reliving pain only strengthens its hold, while acceptance dissolves it. She forgives, not because others deserve forgiveness, but because she deserves freedom. She lets go of the need to explain herself to those who never listened, and to prove herself to those who never saw her. Emotional control frees her from the emotional baggage that once weighed her down. It allows her to step into each new chapter without dragging the pain of the last one. As she grows, her presence changes. She becomes the woman who no longer crumbles under pressure. She no longer needs validation to feel valuable. Her calmness, her focus, her restraint, they become her signature. People begin to notice that she moves differently, speaks differently, and reacts differently. She doesn't rush to defend, doesn't rush to blame, doesn't rush to control. She trusts herself and trusts the timing of her life. Emotional control gives her patience, and patience gives her power. She knows that everything unfolds as it should, and this faith keeps her grounded even in uncertainty. But this doesn't mean her life becomes perfect. It means that perfection is no longer her goal. Peace is. She stops expecting a life without challenges, and instead prepares herself to meet challenges with grace. When life tests her, she no longer asks, "Why me?" She asks, "What now?" She no longer sees obstacles as unfair, she sees them as opportunities to strengthen her emotional discipline. She understands that without tests, mastery cannot exist. And so she meets difficulty with dignity, pain with perspective, and setbacks with strategy. Every challenge becomes another chance to demonstrate her control, not to the world, but to herself. Emotional control also empowers her to create space between emotion and action, a sacred space where wisdom lives. In that space, she learns to observe her thoughts before speaking, to breathe before reacting, and to pause before deciding. This pause is her power. It allows her to choose responses that align with her values instead of being driven by momentary emotion. This is how she maintains her integrity. She no longer sacrifices her peace for a point. She no longer lowers herself to match someone else's chaos. Every time she chooses calm over conflict, she reinforces her strength. Emotional control becomes not just something she practices, but something she embodies. And when others see her, they may think she was born strong, but she knows the truth. Her strength was built from moments of silence after heartbreak, from deep breaths taken instead of words spoken in anger, from tears turned into lessons, from pain transformed into peace. Her power was not given, it was earned. Emotional control didn't come naturally. It came from choosing to rise again and again, until rising became her nature. She has learned that peace is not found, it is forged. A woman who practices emotional control becomes unstoppable because she no longer depends on the world to be calm for her to feel calm. She carries her peace wherever she goes. She is unshaken not because she has never been hurt, but because she has learned to heal wisely. She is fearless not because she never feels fear, but because she has learned that emotions are not barriers. They are signals. She uses them as guides, not governors. She has made peace with her emotions, and in doing so, she has made peace with herself. That is the essence of being unstoppable. It is not about overpowering others, it is about mastering yourself. Emotional control gives a woman her freedom. The freedom to think clearly, love deeply, act wisely, and live purposefully. She becomes the calm in the storm, the stillness in the noise, the light in the dark. Her strength is silent but unbreakable. Her peace is quiet but undeniable. And when she walks through the world, she doesn't just survive it. She elevates it. Because a woman who has mastered her emotions has mastered her power, and that power, once awakened, can never again be silenced.